But what's the question exactly?
Yeah. So is it like not saying that Moses wrote it? Is it like conceding too much to the, I don't know, liberal
Yes.
view without any reason?
Yep. Well, as he was trying to tell you, if you want to tell him, just I'll mention the councils.
Yeah.
No one challenged, no Orthodox Christian or Jew. When I say Orthodox, meaning those who held to the historic faith, even Jews.
Yep.
No one that we know of. If there's someone, he would be the odd man out. The virtual unanimous teaching
Yep.
from the time of Christ among Jews, Christians, up until, let's say, Enlightenment, Moses wrote the bulk of the Pentateuch. Why do I say bulk? Because Christians saw Deuteronomy 34. There it's mentioned Moses' burial.
Yep.
So that part they believed a prophet comes later. Just like Joshua, belief is he wrote the bulk of it, but Joshua 24 records his death. So that means a prophet comes, because if we believe, as we're supposed to, God sends a train of prophets.
Yeah.
So this prophet now has the scriptures of those who came before him. So God can inspire the prophet to add, update, editorialize what came before.
Mhm.
So no one denies that. So this is why we have to be careful. There are statements in the books of Moses that only make sense after Israel settled in the land. I'll give you one example. I'm going to screen share.
Yep. While you add that, brother, let me repeat what I.
Yes, comment on that. Yes. Do we lose him? Oh yeah, he freezes up, brother. Sorry. Okay, well that's good. So we don't have to see. But the only thing is looking at his ugly mug. My goodness, that's ugly. Now, guys, my face getting chubbier. I'm getting because I've been eating. I got to get back. I went hiking, but it's not gonna help. My goodness, that's ugly. Woo! This guy benches close grip 400. Looks like he's been benching 400-pound pizzeria off his chest.
All right, that happens to me at least once a show, man. My goodness, I got raptured. I'm back.
We're just singing your praises, brother.
Yeah, I bet. Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
Now finish your point, though. You're going to finish your point.
I wanted to emphasize what I said earlier, and I want Tim to realize how important that is. When we're talking about, and the reason I mentioned Florence and Trent, as you know very well, brother, the reason I mentioned them, the canon is dealt with there, meaning what books go into our Holy Bible. And when they do deal with those books, they are given and attributed as authored from Moses. So these are non-negotiables. As a Catholic, we need to be very careful not to fall into the liberal trap, because we do believe in Mosaic authorship. And even the early Jews did. Now, I don't know, like Sam said, I have no idea if there are Jews at a later period that deny it. But I can tell you one thing. Early Philo of Alexandria believed it was Mosaic authorship, and Josephus, early Jewish historian, you know this, Sam, believed that it was Mosaic authorship as well.
Yep. So you'll have this unbroken tradition up until the Enlightenment among Jews, Christians. Moses wrote the bulk of it because Deuteronomy 34, someone else wrote. But our view of inspiration doesn't mean, this is where you have to be careful, that prophets who came later would be authorized by God to add to the books that were before them and to either make updates to them. Because remember, I can imagine the kind of script that Moses used would have been different from the script that the Jews would have used when they returned from Babylon. So obviously there'd have to be an updating. Yeah. Similar, to understand what I'm saying, and I'll give you the verses, to Elizabethan English, to modern English. If I show you how they wrote English in the 1600s, it is so hard to read.
Yep.
Their S's look like long F's.
Yep.
So that we account for. Now, an example of what we call an editorial update of a portion of Moses, Genesis 14:14, just one of many examples, says this: when Abraham heard that his nephew had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, went in pursuit as far as Dan. There was no Dan at the time of Abraham, nor at the time of Moses writing in the wilderness. Dan is the piece of parcel given to the tribe of Dan after Joshua conquered. You see my point?
Yeah, yeah.
Moses was in the wilderness. He did not enter the promised land, right? So that
Yeah.
means this must have been written later.
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't mean Moses didn't write the bulk of it. That means someone is now changing the name of a place so that it corresponds with the name known at the time, let's say, of the Israelites. So that means someone comes and says, so now Israel know what Moses is talking about. I'll change it to that. Now, can prophets do that? Yes, because they're inspired.
Yep.
We don't believe Moses died and God went silent. He kept raising prophets. And these prophets would add, like it said Joshua, added to the book of the law. And then Joshua dies, and someone mentions his death. So the bulk of Moses, written by Moses.
Yep.
There are things updated. Now, where do we get this from? Well, number one, even if you go to Daniel 9, here's the principle right here. And I'm going to show you from the Lord. Oh, sorry, I meant Daniel 9. I didn't say 8.
Yeah.
All right, anyway. Watch here. Daniel 9, notice he has scriptures and he's studying them. One of them is the revelation of Jeremiah. Here it is, Daniel 9, 1-3. Notice too, I, Daniel, perceived in the books. Notice books. He's got a number of them. The number of years that according to the word of the Lord to the prophet Jeremiah must be fulfilled for the devastation of Jerusalem. Now, why is this astonishing? Daniel, Jeremiah, Ezekiel are contemporaries. Daniel is taken into captivity, I would believe, around the first deportation. So
Yeah.
either 604, 597 BC. During his time, you have Ezekiel writing in Iraq as well. So Ezekiel's taken. He lives in Shinar, that's in Iraq. Daniel is living in the palace of the king. And then Jeremiah is writing in Jerusalem. You have 3 prophets whose writings we have. And by the time Daniel writes this part, notice it's in the reign of Ahasuerus the Mede. Nebuchadnezzar is dead. Jeremiah has died. But he has a copy of Jeremiah. See how that works?
Yep.
Here's a prophet reading the books of the prophets. And he's reading a book of Jeremiah. That means Jeremiah's book reached him. He heard about Jeremiah and he made sure that he had the book because he knew he's a prophet like him and God would reveal to him stuff he hadn't read to Daniel. So then he sees that in Jeremiah, God said that the captivity would last 70 years. And now he knows the time is over. So now he's asking God, what's next? Now, does he have Moses? Yeah. Daniel 9:11. All Israel has transgressed your law. What law? Turn aside, refuse and obey your voice. So the curse and the oath written in the law of Moses. So he has the book of Moses. And he's mentioning them, the curses found in Leviticus 26, Deuteronomy 28. That if you don't obey God, this is what God's going to do. And he's saying, God, we have sinned like your servant Moses said, and the curses that Moses warned have fallen on us. So he has Moses. Here again, just as it is written in the law of Moses. So you see, you have this unbroken chain, prophet to prophet to prophet to Jesus. Moses wrote the law.
Yep.
Now, do we know what law? Yeah, what you read. How do I know? Okay, I'm going to show you an example of our Lord.
And there are other examples as well. To be very clear, brother, none of them violate the traditional authorship of the book. The early fathers would have been aware of them, and the early Jews were aware of them as well.
Yeah, and the liberal position doesn't have any way of disproving this, right?
No,
There
There isn't any.
There are arguments that have come up with have been refuted, not by conservatives, even though conservatives have refuted them. You have even, for example, let me find it to you. I haven't read it yet, but this man he wasn't a conservative Jew. He was a scholar, and he wrote this book. He wrote a book destroying what's called the documentary hypothesis of Moses. Now, this is the problem with me. I got too many books. I don't have time to read them all. If you can put me full screen. That's what it's me.
yes, definitely, brother.
Right here. Muhammad Rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All right, you see this right here? The documentary hypothesis and the composition of Pentateuch, Umberto Casuto. He, not as a conservative, now you can put me back, bro. Shoot, look, I'm still late. All right, not as a conservative, yeah, because I got to drop 25 pounds. I gained it. But anyway, not as a conservative, but as a scholar, he went through what's called the documentary hypothesis and destroyed it. He goes, number one, there is no external archaeological proof of the theory. Number two, eternally, the internal evidence destroys this theory. The theory went like this, just not to belabor the point. You have four sources, written sources, that make up the Pentateuch. These four sources were independent. They were brought together, combined into one, and that's what the Pentateuch is. Right? So one theory is you have what's called the J source. What does that mean? They notice that in certain chapters, the word Yahweh is used. Like, you can go to Genesis 2, but there they have problems with this theory. It says Yahweh Elohim. But then there are other sources where the word Yahweh doesn't appear. It's the word Elohim.
Yeah.
Like Genesis 1, if you read it, the word Yahweh doesn't appear one time.
Yeah. That's right.
It's Elohim, Elohim. So they go, there must have been a document called the Elohist source, a writer that just knew God as Elohim. But then there must have been another source that used the name Yahweh, Yahwist source. So notice there is no evidence. They're extrapolating it from the text.
Yep.
Then they go, you have the Deuteronomist. That's all about the law code. That too would have been separate. And then you have the priestly editors. The priest who then took these documents and their own source sacrifices, right, combine them to make them one book. Now, if you ask them, do you have any archaeological evidence for any of these written sources? No.
No.
Where did you get it from? From the text.
Yep.
They're seeing the text and they're seeing differences, saying this proves they must have been independent documents.
Yep.
That's where it comes from.
No.
Now, scholars, even liberals, have put holes in this theory saying there is no evidence internally, externally. Your arguments have been refuted, and therefore this should be put to rest. But they refuse to put it to rest.
Yeah. Very scant evidence for it. Very scant.
Yeah. And it's not my opinion. Umberto Casuto and others like him. And he's not a conservative. Now, if you want conservative, one of the greatest scholars, he was a Protestant. This is why we believe that even outside the church, God has mercy.
Yes.
Through no fault of their own.
Yeah.
The man would read and write 25 languages, not exaggerating. His name was Dr. Gleason L. Archer.
Oh, yeah. He's phenomenal.
He was professor and professor emeritus of Trinity Evangelical Divinity School.
Yep.
He wrote one of the best surveys of the Old Testament using archaeology, linguistics to defend and prove Moses wrote the Pentateuch, Daniel wrote Daniel, Isaiah wrote Isaiah. Linguistically, used the language, internal evidence, archaeologically, and he wrote Survey of the Old Testament, which should be on everyone's shelf.
Yep. They need to have a physical copy of it, brother. Physical copy.
Yeah.
100%.
You have to have it.
You have
he
to.
demolishes the arguments because they even think Daniel is a 2nd century work.
That's
that Daniel did not exist.
Yeah. I watched your phenomenal. Yeah.
Yes. So if you can even find them online, if you screen share, brother.
Oh, I didn't see, brother. Sorry about that.
Yeah, right. Okay. You can go to YouTube right here. Hold on, where am I? Put in Gleason Archer. He went, I believe, and I pray we all go to be with the Lord. He went to be with the Lord. He's resting with the Lord. This is what I believe. I pray God has mercy because he did great work for the kingdom.
You did.
And he wasn't an anti-Catholic. Here he is. An entire lecture. Answers to supposed errors in the Old Testament. This is what this man looked like. Now, I ran into this man because he debated Muslims, and sadly, he didn't do good.
Yeah. And in fact, he is spoken of very highly. Bishop Barron speaks very highly of him.
See?
Very, very highly of Gleason
Great
Archer.
man.
Yep.
A great man of God who blessed the church. He went to be with the Lord.
Yeah. I think
Gleason
he
Archer.
died a little while back, I believe. I'm not sure
Yeah, not
exactly
too
when,
long.
but yeah.
Yeah, if you don't need to put this on full screen
Oh,
because I want
gotcha.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, right here,
Okay.
put in Gleason Archer Old Testament, and you're going to see this lecture. This is the book he wrote, Survey of Old Testament Introduction. He's now reviewing it, but get the book. He demolishes the arguments against Mosaic authorship.
Yep.
In fact, I'm going to recommend another YouTube channel, but I keep forgetting the name of the YouTube channel. Man, this guy.
Who's the author, brother?
He is a Christian Egyptologist, and he's conservative, and his entire YouTube channel is devoted showing that the Pentateuch was written at the time of Moses, and that the Pentateuch shows evidence more so than any other book. It was written from someone who knew Egypt. He knew the custom. Yeah, this is also Gleason Archer. Are you aware, brother, that in the Pentateuch, more than any other book, you have more Egyptian loanwords,
Yes.
Egyptian customs and practices than any other book?
That's correct. Yes, I'm aware of that. Yep.
You're talking. I know you know that.
Yeah, so that would make sense for Moses, who
exactly.
was brought up in Egypt. Yeah,
Yeah, David Falk.
amazing. Yeah,
He even
I had
shows
no
you
idea.
here, ancient Egypt. This guy, he's conservative. His entire channel, I'm going to get you the link, is to destroy liberal claims that Exodus did not take place or that Moses did not write the Exodus.
I was not aware of him, brother. This is what channel I didn't know about.
Yeah, no, this guy is solid. You should have him on.
This looks good.
Yeah, you can go back. You don't have to put it full screen, brother.
Let me try and get the link to that channel, brother.
I just sent in private chat.
Oh, you just sent it. Okay, let me share it with the audience.
All right. So this guy shows you there are more Egyptian loanwords, customs, practices than any other book. Now, his argument, others are, if you're telling me the Pentateuch was collated, edited, when the Jews returned from Babylon, why do you find rarely, if any, Aramaic or Persian words? Because if it came out of that period, you would find a high concentration of Aramaic and Persian words, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And why is it all other books do not have the amount of Egyptian loanwords, customs, as you do in the Pentateuch? And how is it the author was spot on with absolute 100% accuracy on Egyptian customs? And even the Ark, he has a book and video showing you, the Ark matches the way the Egyptians would build their altars. So the external evidence supports Mosaic authorship. Internal evidence shows that the person knew Egyptian geography and even knew the Sinai wilderness. He has an entire session showing you that the place names where they went in the wilderness, precise, on the money, spot on. Someone who comes later would not have that kind of knowledge of this wilderness and Egypt.
Yeah, like in the Gospel of John, the stuff they are finding out, which confirms what he wrote, and it was like challenged in the past.
Like they found the pool of Siloam, right?
Yeah.
And Bethesda with 5 porticos, exactly the way John said it. Now, the other thing, Jesus seals the deal.
Yep.
He quotes Genesis 1:27. Sorry, not cross references. And he quotes Genesis 2:24 as sacred history. Right. He says right here, the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female. That Genesis 1:27.
Yes.
Also going to 5:2. And then he quotes Genesis 2:24. He says, this is how God created mankind and created marriage to be male, female, 2 different genders, monogamy, and no one split them asunder. That's what is he basing this on? Genesis 2:24.
Mm-hmm.
For him, this is sacred history. This is how God made them. And that's why he says, when it says one flesh, don't you divide them. Don't make them 2 anymore.
Yep.
In other words, no divorce. So then they ask a question. But didn't Moses give us the right certificate of divorce? Who? Moses. Jesus says, yes, he did. And they're referencing Deuteronomy 24, 1-4. But he says Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. Why? Because of your hardness. So we learned two things. Moses gave this command. Moses wrote it. Jesus agrees. But secondly, the Lord teaches us a principle, which many of us miss. And I'll make one final point. Many of us miss. He tells us not everything in the law was pleasing to God or God's ideal. God did not want divorce, but because you were wicked and evil and couldn't do any better, he tolerated it. Now, what's his proof? God didn't want divorce? Because he quotes the same Moses saying, he made them one flesh.
Yep.
So you see, he's interpreting Moses in light of Moses, and he's telling you that what you find later on may not always be God's standard, but allowances that he allows to meet people where they're at. Because you were hard-hearted, God allowed Moses to allow you to divorce. But from the beginning, God showed you what his plan is. Not polygamy. He wants one man, one woman.
Yeah, and can I ask something about this fragment that you've just talked about? Does this sound as well in English? Because in the Polish translation, it's Jesus asks them, what did Moses command you? Ironically, so that they have to kind of correct themselves and say that he permitted, not commanded, like, because he was not God. So it's in the Polish translation, it's kind of, or maybe it's the
Yes.
Maybe it's
now,
the one you're using. I'm unsure what he's saying, brother.
yeah, no, I understand. It's saying it's a difference between command and permit.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Because
Well,
commanded would be only for God,
yes,
right? And
yes.
Jesus
No,
said
no,
to
no,
them,
we don't want to go that
yeah,
far. No,
yeah.
because the apostles could command you to do
Yes.
things and you'd be bound to them.
Okay.
What you bind on earth has been bound in heaven. No, what it means is it wasn't a command to divorce. It was a permission. Why? Because if you actually read the law of Moses, here's what's going to astonish people. Moses never tells you when to divorce your spouse. He never says. This is what's astonishing. Even the command that's given, it's not the context of if your spouse does this. No, look how it begins. Suppose a man enters into a marriage with a woman, but she does not please him because he finds something objectionable about her, so he writes her a certificate of divorce. Notice he's saying, if in case someone divorces, this is what you do. He's addressing a situation, but he never says,
Yep.
here's when you can divorce, right? He's talking about, suppose someone is displeased with his wife and he divorces her. Then he gives her a certificate, sends her away. And she marries another man. He's commenting on someone who divorces, she marries someone else, and then she wants to go back to the first husband. That's the context. But he doesn't tell you, here's when you divorce, here's why you divorce. He doesn't even mention it.
Yeah.
This is why at the time of Jesus, any good commentary will tell you,
Yep.
at the time of Jesus, here notice it says, does not please him. This led to a rabbinic debate. What is legitimate displeasure? There was the school of Shammai. Shammai, at the round time, she said, the only displeasing thing that will ground your divorce, lie divorce, if she's been sexually unfaithful.
Yep.
Then you had the school of Hillel. He goes, if she even burns your food and that displeases you, you can divorce her. No, I'm serious. These were the two main schools. And
It's
you know
true,
what?
brother. You're laughing, but it's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no
And
idea.
you know why Hillel is important? Hillel is the father of Gamliel, the teacher of Paul.
Yep.
Oh,
Paul is the disciple of Gamliel.
yeah.
So this is Gamliel's father. He goes, if she burns your food and that displeases you, you can divorce her. Jesus
Sounds
what?
like what a Muslim would
Islam.
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Islam. Jesus did what? He went with the more stricter code, like no divorce, but if she commits immorality and you divorce her, that's one thing.
Yep.
But if it's a sacramental marriage, even then, you can't remarry.
Yeah.
And you would know it better than me. But what's the point? Not to belabor the point. And final point. Notice he says Moses wrote it. Now, the final proof. Why? Because this here shows you Jesus assumes Moses wrote Genesis. Because I can show you Exodus is quoted in the New Testament as written by Moses. I can show you Leviticus. I can show you Numbers, Deuteronomy. They're all attributed to Moses. The one book we don't have any explicit reference being Mosaic is Genesis, but here Jesus confirms it indirectly. How? How does he? Right here. Because of this, Moses gave you circumcision. Now, John has to explain to his audience because they're not Israelites. If they're Israelites, they would know. It is, of course, not from Moses, but from the patriarchs, which he's right. The command to circumcise wasn't given through Moses on Sinai. It's found in Genesis 17.
Yeah.
The command to circumcise was given by God to Abraham, which Moses wrote down. So Moses does not repeat anywhere else in the law, you got to get circumcised. He only says, when it comes to the right of the purification of the woman, that she can then, because she has to wait, if she has a child, a male, 30 days, she's unclean. Daughter, 60 days. But on the 8th day, she can then bring her son to be circumcised. But here, it's not a command to circumcise. Moses is saying, in reference to the woman being purified, she can interrupt her period of purity because she has to wait 30 days after she gives birth to a son, 60 days for a female. She can interrupt that purification process by bringing her son to be circumcised on the 8th day. But where do we find the command? Genesis 17.
Yeah.
Who received the command? Abraham. But who wrote it down? Moses. That's why Jesus says, Moses gave you circumcision.
Yeah. So on that point, is
Brother,
it,
we're going to have to go to somebody else.
yeah,
brother. We got a
just
lot of people backstage,
one last
brother.
sentence. Is it a valid
Really quick
parallel to say, for example, to a Protestant, also in the Old Testament, before anything was written, there was a whole tradition before that, right? Because Moses wrote about the patriarchs before him, and there was
final point, brother, because I got it jam-packed backstage, brother.
Other tradition, what? What was the tradition? Real quick. Yeah, what?
Yeah, is it like a valid argument that there's a tradition of the church, and later there are scriptures in the New Testament, and it was the same in the Old, because before Moses wrote anything, there was
oral tradition, you mean?
Yeah, there was this tradition before he wrote anything.
Oral tradition?
Yeah, real quickly answer your question. Not only must there have been a tradition that was passed on, but also there's some evidence, by the way Moses writes, he actually had written records that were written before him as far back as perhaps even Noah.
Yeah.
There's some evidence that they would have had actually written records that they kept, which Moses would have used in compiling the Mosaic Law.
Okay.
So there you go.
Brother, hopefully that helped.
Yeah,
brother.
yeah. Thanks a lot.
God bless you, brother. Was that helpful, brother? Was that helpful?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, awesome. God bless you,
I'll
brother.
probably have to do a session on where do they find, you know where you're going to find it? When it says, this is the generation of Adam. Now, by the way, if you bring up my screen real quickly.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, go for it, brother. Go for it.
Yeah, notice purification, male 33 days, 66 days. Now, I rounded up, I said 30 or 60, but this is where she could interrupt it to get circumcised. Now, with that said, I'm out of here unless you need me. I'll be listening.
Brother, God bless you, brother. Your voice is getting better, brother. How are you doing it if you're not resting it?
I don't know, man. Maybe through your prayers. Maybe I'm looking at
better.
you. I'm hoping I'm better than you. All right.
You're a hater, brother. Are you watching that debate tonight, brother? You going to be watching that?
I got with my pizza, so I'm going to get fat again because of this dude, but I'm going to have to get back tomorrow.
I might get me a pizza too. God bless you, brother.